welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. Let me just turn that off. And that for the moment as well. And there we go. Nearly. Okay. And there we go. I'm gonna play some Inkulinati, the charmingly weird medieval game. And we're going to dunk on liberalism and its reactionary kissing cousins. I guess we're going here. Right. That's how I wanted it. There we go. Okay, let's choose our army. He's good to have around. Less so. Yeah, keep him. Floating, exploding head, always good to have. You want at least one floating, exploding head. Those are important. For reasons. There we go. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me just be sure, yeah. Okay, mic is on. And that's one down. Let him just be one short. Oh, what did I just do? I thought I was pushing the other exploding guy. Oh, that wasn't great. That could have gone better. Okay. Hook-wielding devil. Oh, no, that's... Oh. Yeah, fuck. Yeah, this is shaping up not to be the absolute best foray into this particular level I've ever had. But all is not lost. Much is lost. Oh, well, okay, we can get rid of this guy. That's good. He's dangerous. He's one of the ones who can actually kill a beastie with full health in one go. Okay, now things are looking a little bit better. Okay, we've got 3-2. Ooh, halos and health. And cute noises. They do make very cute noises. They always do. Well, at least the little animals. The like, demons just make sort of weird noises. Okay. There we go. And there we are. That's what I like to see. How's everybody doing, chat? Okay, and... let me just make sure not gonna run into problems when I record later on. Oh, I do need to make some space. Overachunar korisnici videozapisi. Tak. Just moving some stuff over so that I can clear space on my drive to record later on when we get to the dunking phase of the evening. Yesterday it was quite enlightening. We watched Vushian, who explained that the way you can tell that things are bad in Israel, you see, not by looking at the human rights situation, not the pogrom in Huwara, not the, like, follow-on pogroms, not the banning of the Palestinian flag. No. Yeah, it's because, according to an article from the business press, apparently Netanyahu's government isn't listening to economists. That's the proof that things are bad, not anything else. That he's not listening to economists. It's like, I can. It's hard to think of somebody better not to listen to than economists. I have to say, most of them. Honorable exceptions, noted, but on the whole, I would say that in a battle of wits on the subject of the economy between Vosh and an economist, it would be a 0-0 draw. The motherfucker has no concept of what, like, class interest is either, but then, of course not. So that's why he doesn't understand that it's possible that high-tech industry has different concerns about the current government in Israel than, say, normal people, because high-tech industry has actually, on the whole, done really, really well off of the occupation, because they use it as a testing ground for their stuff. They, you know, all surveillance tech, drone tech, anything like that. And they try it out, and then they can sell it internationally as being field tested on Palestinians. What they're worried about from this government is not what, like, non-ghouls are worried about from this government. But there you go. Okay. So far, it's not looking too bad. She doesn't have any high damage beasties out. Back another. Give myself a little bit of healing there. I think I need another softbox or something. This lighting isn't quite the way I'd like it. But I haven't completely worked it out because it's all very temperamental. When my when my softbox, when the illumination goes, the intensity goes up on that, all of a sudden, it immediately gets darker on the OBS camera control. And figuring out exactly how to make those two things interact harmoniously is still on my to-do list. Okay. Still need to... Ah, wait. Okay. Apparently, out of range for everything that I am trying to get. But there, that's better. Orale! Okay. Nah, I'm good. Still haven't really done anything to Hildegard yet. She is so far intact. Though Top Toast the Alewife also remains intact. But not for long. Ulrich, the purveyor of, like, stuff that explodes. Here, get that out of the way. And have an explodey head. Everybody needs an explodey head now and then. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, I can just get rid of him now. Oh, the snails, however, are a bit of a menace. Oh. Oh, that's a pity. Oh, hell. I should have adjusted the move order so that I could get rid of him when I had a chance. Oh, well, I still can. Wee. And a little ink blot. Oh, okay. What is this, a unilateral apocalypse? Ah, hell. It was a pain in the ass. Only one side actually has to adjust. And in this case, it's my side, which makes it that much more annoying. Yeah, there, that's sorted out that... Oh, another one of the fucking snails. Those snails don't look like much, but they're a menace. Oh, well, there we go. And it's about time to be moving on, unfortunately. It's still handy to be... can I heal there? No. Sitting on the ink blot because it ensures you can keep drawing. Fucking unilateral apocalypse. More snails, too. Okay, one less snail to worry about. Oh, I don't mind the snail being there, because the snail has absolutely no ability to do anything at a distance. Snails need to be right up against you. There we go. Anything I can do with a boop? No. No booping range. Okay. That is why snails are a menace. They can just do that. Yeah, bloody snails. So what's everybody been up to today, chat? Who have I got in here with me? Get rid of that little guy. Oh, perfect timing. Absolutely perfect timing. I win this level right as it comes time for the roasting part of the evening. Well, first the hand lotion part of the evening, but then the roasting part of the evening. The roasting part of the evening is coming right up. Okay, next. We'll take the explosions one, I suppose. Hand actions. Bellow wielder. Yeah, I'll take him. And now it's time to move on to menu. And all boot. And now let's see what we've got. Find my windows here. Okay. Oh, we've got a few. Okay, we can continue with the ignoramifications Vosh brings to bear on the subject of Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, that was starting to get a little bit spicy. Or, of course, we've got... Oh, is kurz gesagt billionaire propaganda? Well, I mean, it is. It literally is taking money from billionaires and producing billionaire propaganda. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with yes. And actually, after the recent take that we heard from Vosh about how, well, how the left really ought to be trying to cozy up to billionaires to get some of that money, I have a feeling that he will see it differently. And that will be interesting. It will, I'm sure, not at all make us wonder what Ian's funding sources are. Lori Lightfoot's horrible loss for the left. That also looks impressively ridiculous. What else have we got? What else can we look at? Oh, the resurgence of conservatism from Zanderhole. Which is great, because just a few months ago he was talking about how the right had lost and everything. Also got some Timcast IRL crap. And yeah. We've got Is the Trans Agenda Destroying Western Culture? Hey, Ludlow, how you doing? Any preferences out of the ones that I've been listing here? Hmm. Got Vosh, who apparently thinks that Lori Lightfoot losing a primary is a horrible loss for the left, which tells you a lot about how he defines the left. Schwarzenegger on anti-Semitism, which, I mean, that sounds like... First of all, I don't need to know what Ian thinks is a based take on anti-Semitism, considering that he's kind of anti-Semitic himself. I already have, like, low... that should already be interested. We've got... some North Korean vlogs that I thought would be interesting to look at just as a way to talk about media analysis, how you analyzing sources and shit like that. Maybe continue for now with the Netanyahu thing.
We'll just say that. And
Yeah, here we go. The letter added in it. This is what he was just getting done explaining. This it's just proof that things are really, really bad. In its first 6 weeks in power, this is what the letter says, the government regularly ignores the opinions and warnings of experts, including economists, bankers, investors, and business owners. Well, gee, I mean, that's totally why Netanyahu is bad news, because he ignores the fucking advice of economists, bankers, investors, and business owners. It's amazing that this is what we're talking about. That is the magic of Ian Kuczynski. Because he just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You don't know where he's gonna go. It's a magical mystery tour of ignorance.
the they are fully consolidating behind this. I mean, I don't even know how to fully convey the severity
He's right. He does not know how to convey the severity. He's demonstrating that to us right now by failing.
of the situation just in pure economic terms. Companies do not withdraw billions from their investments over nothing. This is seen as like a pivotal.
What does he think that the fucking high tech industry is doing in Israel in the first place? You think that they're building fucking a new Foursquare so the Palestinians can enjoy themselves? The high tech industry in Israel is totally integrated into the surveillance state. It's totally integrated into the occupation. The fucking high tech industry companies don't get freaked out in Israel because Netanyahu's going to be doing shitty things to Palestinians. That's not how that works.
Corporations will leverage less money than this on Nestle's practices in Africa or on Latin American death squads.
What does he mean by leverage here? Because, I mean, what he's just describing is two things that are extremely profitable for companies. Those are two things that the companies do in the first place because because it's really, really profitable. I mean, does he even know what leveraging means? Like, is he just learning in real time, like, what business is? I don't know, but we're about to find out.
We are talking about a fearsome prophecy of what is to come.
No, we're really not. I mean, yes, there are horrible things to come, and the judicial reform is potentially a part of that. Although the judicial reform, it's worth noting, one place that it does not change one damn thing is in the West Bank for Palestinians, because Palestinians in the West Bank don't have access to the normal courts anyway. But yeah, but he, instead of talking about things like, criminalizing the Palestinian flag and the pogroms and all of the just openly genocidal rhetoric and stuff like that, he's sitting here looking at like what fucking investors are doing. That is so on brand.
And there have been protests. About 160,000 people demonstrated in Tel Aviv Saturday night against the Israeli government's plans to weaken the country's judicial system. Crowd expert Ophir Greenbaum Liron told CNN this would make it one of the biggest single demonstrations yet against the legislation. That's right, this would make it one of the biggest single demonstrations yet against the legislation.
And a lot of the people at those demonstrations, it's worth noting, they're not actually, they don't particularly, not all, some of them do. Some of them actually do care about Palestinian rights and stuff. There are people like that. You will see Palestinian flags there, and not just because this government is criminalizing the Palestinian flag. Not just because of that, but you get a lot of liberal Zionists who are actually kind of okay with the just constant human rights atrocities as long as they were directed at Palestinians. I mean, a lot like, a lot of protests you get here, especially when Trump was in, you'd have liberals with signs saying, like, if Hillary Clinton was here, I'd be at brunch, and it's like, well, just fucking go there. Just fucking go to brunch. You're not actually helping anything with that fucking sign. You're just demonstrating how vapid your protest is.
That has been in the works for weeks.
Hey, Phoenix.
They are really going ham over there.
So we're continuing, at least provisionally, with the Ian bullshit on Israel that has been just impressively ignorant. But there are other options. And we might switch over to one later. But he's just sitting here talking about, he's not talked at all at this point, 10 minutes in. Hasn't said a damn thing about the human rights situation. Hasn't said a thing about the Palestinians. He's talking about what the fucking investors think and how they're pissed off that Netanyahu's government won't talk to, isn't listening to economists and bankers. That's the real problem.
There. No sound. That's unusual. That's... Well, whatever you like.
I mean, no sound would be an improvement on his stream.
There are lots of people there. You might...
Wait, this is the sort of insightful commentary that you can only find in the Vosh pit. It is the I mean, there are a lot of people there. Thank you for that, Ian. Thank you. You've really told us something there.
If you oh, sure.
See those flags? You know what those flags stand for? These motherfuckers are okay with what Israel does with the Palestinians. They're okay with what kind of a regime Israel is. What they don't like, this is like the I'm with her contingent. They're cool, you know, the America was already great. That's what this is. They don't, you know, people who are waving that flag are not doing it because they care about the human rights situation. They're doing it because they care about their situation. You know, I'm starting to think that the man doesn't actually know what leftism is, Phoenix Rising says. Yeah, you know, I'm beginning to think that too. Yeah, especially when, oh, I mean, you know, like a week or two ago, he was trying to roast Thought Slime very unsuccessfully, and Thought Slime is like, well, like, making a comparison to of trying to appeal to entitled men who lean towards the far right. And Thought Slime said something to the effect of, "Hey, that's like saying the left should appeal to billionaires just to get the money." Yeah, but you're not going to be the left anymore if you get that money, because that you don't get that money for being the left. And Bosch was like, "No, I want that money." And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's class interest. Never fucking heard of it. Okay, I didn't. The one word I caught in there was bitrou, which is like to secure or something. Yeah, see, this is the kind of fucking liberal Zionist crowd we're looking at right here.
Prime Minister does go hard. That is true.
Oh yeah, Prime Minister would, you know, fucking Netanyahu is quaking at his boots. I mean, that is like one step. That is seriously just one notch below a "not my president," and we know what fucking effect that had. Calquel. Oh god, the handmaid's outfits, that's coming over here too. Like, I mean, which is really even more ridiculous in the Israeli context, because in Israel they do not have civil marriage. If you are, yeah, if to get married and to get divorced, you have to obey the rulings of a group of unelected fucking rabbis, far right fundamentalist ass rabbis. And if your woman wants to divorce in Israel, and you're Jewish, yeah, then you got to get your husband's permission, and he can refuse it indefinitely. There is no requirement that he give it. This, I mean, yeah, exactly. They're totally back at brunch. Israel, we have a problem. What, just now? You're just noticing that, are you? Like, there hasn't been. Tell me if I've missed something, Chad. There hasn't been a single Palestinian rights. And I know that there have been Palestinian rights contingents at these protests, in at least some of them. But I haven't seen a single, like, pro Palestinian placard yet.
We came to demonstrate.
Tens of thousands of protesters travelled from across the country, gathering outside Israel's parliament, the Knesset, for a sixth week to demonstrate against controversial judicial reform plans. Many believing the new right-wing coalition government's decisions will steer the country away from democratic values and the rule of law.
What democratic value? What fucking rule of law? Like, just go over, just cross the green line and have a look at the West Bank and tell me about the democratic values and rule of law you see in action there.
Protesting for my children, I'm protesting for this country, I'm protesting for the country my father fought for, my brother fought for.
So, okay, no, considering that what we're talking about here, it would be her father, so that's probably Lebanon, which is where Israel invaded Lebanon and killed about 60,000 people, just absolutely massacred the place. It was absolutely horrible, and liberals at the time were like, where is my beautiful Israel now? You know, in fact, if I remember correctly, that horrible poem, that poem that fucking Nancy Pelosi reads every time she wants to pretend that she cares about, like, how bad things are getting, I believe that is a liberal Zionist wrote it in response to what was going on in Lebanon in 82. So, like, this is somebody who is very clearly, she is very clearly saying here, she is not she's not an anti-racist, she's not a supporter of Palestinian rights, she's actually, you know, just as fucking genocidal as this government is, fundamentally. I mean, not necessarily exactly, but I mean, on the same overall wavelength, she doesn't like how they're doing it.
My uncle died for.
Let's not critically examine the fighting that Israelis had to do to get the territory they have right now.
Define had to do, Ian. What do you mean had to do? They could have just not done it.
Echoing that sentiment is opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid.
Yeah, Yair Lapid. I was talking about this guy last night. He is racist as fuck. This guy, you know, his whole slogan when he was standing for a PM was just all about just straight up just racial slurs against Palestinians and shit, talking about basically ethnic cleansing and stuff. He's an absolute shithead. He's disgusting. Like, so if people are applauding this guy, that shows you these people don't give a shit about human rights. They just care about theirs. You know, look, a Sea of Israel flag's not a single Palestinian flag. And I can tell you, at some of these protests, there definitely have been some. Because a lot of people, well, not a huge number of people, because a lot of the people who would be protesting that have fled the country because it became unsafe to be, like, openly leftist in Israel, even if you're Jewish, a long time ago now. So a lot of the people who would be protesting that are in Berlin and London and Paris and, like, fucking New York now. But there are Palestinian flags at some of these protests because the government criminalized displaying the flag. But in this contingent, we're not seeing a single one. It is just a sea of fucking Degel Magen David.
We will not hide in the houses as they try to turn Israel into a dark dictatorship.
It already is that.
They will not shut us up.
It would be nice if they did. Like, you have had nothing useful to contribute yet.
The reforms would allow the Knesset to re-legislate laws struck down by the Supreme Court. Overall, the courts with a simple majority.
Levadrot. Okay, my Hebrew is not good.
Influence the appointments of judges.
Well, we've seen people from all sectors of society here. Teachers, artists, dancers, people from the LGBTQ community and the tech industry as well.
She remembered the cue.
But they're all here with the same message. They say they're concerned about the future of this country.
The danger is that the Supreme Court would lose its independence and will not.
While we were filming, things.
Amonot Hamiut Hashmolani. Something about the left.
Things got heated.
Oh, this says the left wing does not belong to Israel, I believe. Pretty sure that's what this is. Hamiut Hashmolani lo Yikvoa le Yisrael. Yeah, I think that's the leftists do not belong to Israel. Yeah, like, so this guy's fash. But, I mean, Oh, interesting question, Ledlow. I have to say, okay, do you find that anarchists in general are lacking in having a coherent opinion of opposition to settler colonial projects like Israel Zionism? Um, my experience on that has not been bad, except in Germany. In Germany, it's a special case. Like, non-Jewish, white German leftists have absolute shitball politics when it comes to that stuff. Whether they call themselves anarchists or anything else, for the most part. With honorable exceptions, including some friends of mine, I should say. But my experience other than that tends to be pretty good, with anarchists in particular. My experience tends to be they aren't necessarily wonderfully well informed, because it's hard to keep up on every single one of these things. And, so, like, they aren't necessarily all that well informed about the history of Zionist ideology and just all the different ways in which it's fucked up. But my experience is they tend to have their hearts in the right place. They tend to be on the side of, Palestinian rights and, like, supporting the Palestinian BDS campaign. So, I mean, maybe it's the people you're hanging out with, maybe it's the people I'm hanging out with. But my experience has been pretty positive. Better than, say, sort of your free-floating lefty people who will just call themselves a leftist without having any specification that you'll see, like, associated with the fucking Labour Party, and they're more likely to just buy into all sorts of liberal Zionist bullshit. But my experience with anarchists is that it's pretty good.
As we'd seen a few times between...
Oh my god. Fucking nerd. Nerd. Oh my...
Yeah, he doesn't know what it says.
My god.
As we'd seen a few times between protesters and government...
Fuck it, he's fash, dude. But, I mean, here I am expecting fucking Ian here to recognize fash based on a placard in a language he can't read, when he can't recognize fash when they're using a language he can read.
Supporters. The scenes weren't much different inside the Parliament building. Insults were exchanged between the ruling party and opposition members.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I have to say, I haven't been around a whole lot of a lot younger anarchists. I mean, most of the anarchists that I've been in contact with, like, would be sort of 20s to 60s, so I guess that includes Zoomer. But I haven't, I mean, there are, like, disappointing people and disappointing takes pretty much everywhere. I'm not gonna say that, and I've certainly encountered them, but it's not been common enough that I'm like, holy shit, there's a problem. Except in the case of Germany. In the case of Germany, it is so ubiquitous, and it is so just painful that it is a problem. And in fact, a lot of my political writing in German is specifically dedicated to it because it's so fucking pervasive. So, we may just be looking at different groups, and that doesn't mean either of us is necessarily wrong about what we're seeing, or wrong, but my experience has been, I've generally found that the, like, anarchists I've been around have more or less, have generally, sort of had their hearts in the right place on that, even if they're not necessarily very well informed. Because there's a lot of stuff to be informed about. I mean, everybody's going to be ignorant on something. But most of us don't get a lot of money to have a stream where we just explain stuff to people that we actually don't understand ourselves.
After several hours of deliberation, a committee approved the Judiciary Reform Bill's progress to be voted on in Parliament in the coming days. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the proposed changes are needed to rein in an already powerful judiciary. His supporters have also dismissed the protests as a refusal to accept the election result.
Oh, well, I mean, and the thing is, it's easy to dismiss the people who are, like, cheering for Lapid. It is easy to dismiss the people who because they clearly they really just don't give a shit. They don't like Netanyahu. but they're kind of okay with the shit he does when somebody else is doing it. You know, if Lapid or Livni or somebody like that were doing a reform like this, which I would not entirely rule out happening, I don't think that would have been impossible. I mean, it's him doing it in the event, but I could see it happening. I think they would probably be okay with it, just like they're okay with every fucking atrocity that those motherfuckers have committed.
We said from the beginning we want to negotiate, we want to have a wider support for the bill, but it takes two, and I hope the opposition, some of the parts of the opposition cannot acknowledge the fact that they lost the election.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog and his US counterpart Joe Biden have urged both sides to come together and build.
Yeah, both sides to come together. That's to say, like, both sides of the fucking political class there, which completely excludes Palestinians, by design.
A consensus. So far, there appears to be little room for negotiation. The next few days, though, will prove vital. Sarah Khairat, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
Yes.
Not a single pro-Palestinian placard in the entire thing.
As Robert Heim points out, Netanyahu is currently in coalition with a group that is literally designated as a foreign terrorist organization. It was removed.
Which, it's worth noting, that's just a totally meaningless designation. That's just the Secretary of State in the U.S. can just designate organizations like that. It doesn't necessarily mean they've even done anything. They don't have to have evidence. It's just an absolute just farce. So, but yeah, but Kahanists are bad news. In fact, to the extent that Israel, in fact, banned the Kach party. It's even in the Wikipedia article. This is the extent of fucking Ian's thirst for knowledge here. He checks Wikipedia.
From the U.S. terror blacklist last year, but it's still on the specially designated global terrorist list. It's basically just an extremely far-right, anti-Arab political bloc in Israel. You know, basically
they're outright fascists, and they're the organizations they're best known for in North America there's what's called the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, which just basically their whole thing was just when they were really active was attacking anything to do with Palestinians. These days, the last time I heard of them, they were in Canada making deals with with just regular fascists, just literal neo-Nazis, because that's the thing about the Zionist movement. One thing that just basic Zionist praxis is you collaborate with the most genocidal anti-Semites you can find.
All of them are anti-Arab, you know. But sometimes they're more anti-Arab than...
It's anti-Palestinian. I mean, this is a thing you have to keep in mind. Because, if you pay any attention to Zionist propaganda, to, Israeli officials, they will always avoid talking about Palestinians to the extent possible. They will always say Arabs. Because they don't want to acknowledge that Palestinians exist. And so they just call them Arabs as if there's no, national community, a culture specific to the region. That they're just all the same.
Than others. Kahanism gained no political legitimacy until the April 2019 Israeli election. As a result of the Israeli political crisis, then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu attempted to gain extra seats by appealing to Kahanist voters by making a deal with the Jewish Home to have them run on a joint list with Otzma Yehudit as the...
Which, Otzma Yehudit, that means Jewish strength. That is the fascist fucking party name possible.
Union of right-wing parties. The party received enough seats for Otzma Yehudit to be represented, but Ben Ari, who was supposed to represent the fifth slot in the Union of right-wing parties list, was barred from running after the list was submitted. Otmaz Yehudit eventually saw parliamentary representation in 2021, when Itamar Ben-Gvir won a seat as part of a joint list with the Religious Zionist Party.
Yeah, okay, now we are 16 minutes into this thing. I mean, apart from just saying that Kahanis are anti-Arab, he has not talked about Palestinian rights at all.
Won 6 seats in the 2022 Israeli legislative election and will be represented in what has been called the most right-wing government in Israeli history. In November 2022, after a memorial event for Kahane attended by Ben-Gvir, the U.S. State Department hosted a press briefing saying, "Celebrating the legacy of a terrorist organization is abhorrent. There is no other word for it. It is abhorrent."
Yeah, and the thing about that is it had about as much meaning as a fucking fart. Because occasionally this is part of the dance. This is part of the fucking game that the US and Israel play. Israel will do something horrible and it horrifies basically all of world opinion, fair bit of US opinion even, and the US has to like say, "Oh, we're deeply concerned about this. That is terrible what's going on there." And everybody's like, "Oh wow, see, look, the U.S. is deeply concerned about this. They think what's going on is terrible." And then nobody looks into whether the weapons are still flowing, whether the money is still flowing to Israel. And so they think that there is something serious going on when the reality is that nothing has meaningfully changed.
So in case you were wondering how far things have gotten, the U.S. State Department has had a briefing denouncing the political wing that Netanyahu has formed a coalition government with.
So, okay, people whose opinion on Israel fucking Ian rates. Economists, bankers, and venture capitalists, and the U.S. State Department. I love that he says this right after I was just explaining why that's completely meaningless.
The U.S. State Department, which has historically been a very pro-Israeli organization, considering the fact that there are a military base in the Middle East. But they are so bad that the U.S. State Department had to step out and go, okay,
this isn't new.
This is actually disgusting.
Yeah, they had to do that in order to, because the U.S. pretends to be an honest broker in the Middle East. And so the U.S. has to occasionally express concerns.
You know how bad that is? Anything more substantial than finger waving? Well,
no, nothing more substantial than finger waving. Let's see, does Vosh even agree that finger waving is insubstantial?
Well, the U.S. State Department does not have any official authority, I'm afraid, to disband Israeli coalitions.
Yeah, I mean, they fucking overthrow governments all over the world, but they couldn't possibly have any influence over a state that is totally, completely, abjectly dependent on U.S. funding, U.S. weapons, and U.S. diplomatic support. I mean, the fucking U.S. government has, just by snubbing Israeli officials, torpedoed entire major arms deals that Israel was making that were very important strategically to the Israeli state. But, yeah, the State Department has no... I mean, the State Department is in the thick of it. They have their hands in every fucking coup that the U.S. has ever incited or organized when there's a government the U.S. doesn't like, whether you find it in Venezuela, in Chile, you know, in fucking, you know, in what was Zaire at the time, in the fucking Italy in 1948, although that wasn't so much a coup as just a massive manipulation of the election. But the thing is, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. government has a lot of power to influence Israel, because Israel can only do all the shit that they do if they keep getting the weapons. And if something calls the weapons that give them what is in the technical literature called their qualitative military edge, QME, namely, because then is jeopardized, then Israel takes notice, is the thing. But the thing is that almost never happens. That has basically never happened in any meaningful way. So, I mean, what he's saying is just, he's just so fucking ignorant.
Yeah, there's not really much hopium to this, I'm afraid. It seems like the bill is going through. Netanyahu's coalition seems to be pretty on board with doing this. They can protest all they want, but the coalition controls both the executive and the legislative branches, I think, by a convincing margin. So whether
So what he's saying is he doesn't actually know how many seats the coalition has. Let's find that out real quick, shall we? Composition of Knesset. I don't know either, but see, unlike fucking Ian, I like to find these things out. So the government party is made up of, they have 64 seats to the opposition's 56. So you have one independent, you have okay, Otzma Yehudit has 6 seats. United Torah Judaism, Shas, Religious Zionist Party, that's 7, 7, and 11. That's the fundamentalist bloc. And then Likud has 32. Likud on its own still has more than Yesh Atid, which is Yair Lapid's party, like a center-right racist party. And, of course, part of the problem... Okay, you've got Hadash and Ta'al, which is a communist party. Wait, Yisrael Beitenu is in the opposition? That's interesting, because they're also a fascist party. Yisrael Beitenu is Lieberman's party, Avigdor Lieberman, if people remember that guy. United Arab List, that's 5 seats, and basically no mainstream political party will form a coalition with them because they're not Jewish. So, yeah. Okay. But, of course... So, yeah, it's the margin, I wouldn't exactly say it's not a huge margin. If they lose one coalition partner, then the whole government ends up in disarray. If, like, Shas goes away, or Otzma Yehudit goes away, then actually this whole thing ends up in the air. Especially if Yisrael Beitenu wants to work with Yesh Atid. But, yeah. But of course he only sees this in terms of electoralism. Because, but then the people who are protesting, they also do too.
Whether or not things are actually going to be stopped, you know. I don't actually know. Hold on.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yahoo approval rating Israel. Do we not have approval ratings in Israel?
Yes, of course there are fucking approval ratings.
Can we trust that rating? What rating? We don't have a rating.
Yeah, we almost certainly do. There's no way that there are not major polling organizations. Israeli polling Netanyahu. Let's see. Netanyahu approval rating. Okay, that's August 2022. Tools, need something more recent. Past year, let's say. Well, I mean, that sort of information certainly exists, but it does not seem to be available in English, at least I'm not finding it, so.
Too low to find? I wish it was as simple as that. I actually can't see any approval ratings. I just see, like, vote totals. Looks like Israel's national security minister has a portrait of a guy who did a mass shooting on Arabs. Yeah, Ben Gvir. This is the guy that we just talked about. Yeah, this was the guy associated with the far-right terrorist org.
He's one of the guys associated with the far-right terrorist org. The thing is that when you talk about Israeli politics, everybody's associated with a fucking far-right terrorist org. Likud was born out of a far-right terrorist org. Like, one of the OG far-right terrorist orgs of the Zionist movement. It's fucking far-right terrorist organizations all the way down.
A party which espouses Kahanism and anti-Arabism won 6 seats in 2022. Yeah. Is this a preview of America in 2024, 2028? Probably. At the very least, it's a warning sign. I wish I knew some kind of approval rating? I know that he won the election, but
let's see. Israeli polling organizations. Surveys and polls. Okay, Israel Democracy Institute. Let's see. Okay, that. Okay, only minority of Israelis. 66% of Israelis disagree with the judicial overhaul, the so-called reform. 39% of Israelis do not trust the purity of the Knesset elections, whatever purity means. Huh. Approval ratings. Yeah, actually, overall, it seems that this coalition does not have much approval. The thing about these coalition governments, the thing about this is, what it is it's one party that got a small minority of votes that has clustered around it a bunch of parties that got even smaller minorities of votes. So you get a party that had like 32%, something like that, and it's surrounded by parties with single-digit approval ratings. So that doesn't mean that anybody's all that popular. People did not vote, fucking Likud did not get a majority. The reason they're in this coalition is because they did not get a majority. And none of these far-right parties come even close to getting a majority. They would be like fucking laughing if they managed 20% one day. None of these people are actually in government because they're particularly popular. They're in government because they were able to form a coalition with each other. That's it.
this is the legislative election. Oh, that's right, Prime Minister, the legislative.
Yeah, that's right. Fuck, it's a parliamentary system. Legislative elections are how it works.
Is what we're looking at here. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu's party, the Likud.
You fucking Wally. Likud. Christ, have you even just watched regular-ass news sometime? Because they pronounce it correctly, more or less.
Got 23.41% of the votes.
Yeah, see, that's fuck all. They are not. They're not in government because they're popular. I mean, this is the same shit that, like, fucking Angela Merkel did for years. Her party was not popular. But the Social Democrats refused to form coalitions with anyone to their left, and as a result, her party ended up always being in government.
What is the full coalition? Oh, well, 6 hours ago, there was a New York Times article saying Netanyahu's grip loosens amid Israel turmoil. So that's cool, I guess. I can't read it because of the fucking paywall, but it says splits have emerged in the
Yeah, that's the only reason he isn't going to read about it.
Coalition. I guess we'll see how things develop. EU diplomats were surprised by Netanyahu's lack of coalition control.
Well, yeah, of course, because everybody in this fucking coalition is weak as shit when you get down to it. Because what you have is all these tiny-ass parties with no seats, with just a handful of seats, who suddenly get to be in the driver's seat because it's the only way that Likud can stay in government. And so naturally, all of them are trying to push their agenda. And contrary to a lot of people's beliefs that, that the right wing has, no sectarianism in it, that's just a leftist problem, that we're all very sectarian, the right wing just completely holds together. That's bullshit. The right wing is, apart from it, it's a battle of money and a battle of egos, and they're constantly fighting for who gets to be on top. That's why in the U.S., every time somebody tries to put together an overall think tank, an overall, like, foundation or publication for the entire far right in the U.S., all the fash together, it collapses. It collapses in a battle of egos, and it's the same thing in this fucking coalition.
European officials in Israel expected Premier to have more influence over the far right. Wednesday discussed rising violence.
They don't see the situation as particularly dire because they don't give a shit about the people it's dire for, which is to say Palestinians. And I just can't help noticing that we are 19 minutes deep. 19 minutes and 42 seconds out of 24:05. I don't think he's even said the word Palestinian yet.
Surprised.
He hasn't looked at a single. He hasn't looked at a single Palestinian source on this subject. Let me see. Let me see what electronic interest. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, there is plenty of information about like the Palestinian standpoint on this, like the fact that this government is going even more all in on promoting settler terror against Palestinians in the West Bank. He's not saying a thing about it. He's just so fucking useless.
By Netanyahu's perceived inability to rein in his
but it's because he's looking at these right-wing sources too, the Times of Israel. That's not a source that you're going to find all that much about Palestinian rights in, because the Times of Israel is against Palestinian rights.
Far-right coalition partners. Whoa, not being able to rein in fascists. Wow, that's crazy. Not that yet Netanyahu is not himself a fascist. Why would he rein that in when that's what he wants? Dark Excalibur, there is one of the biggest divides in politics is between the...
Oh, hey, look. Just as I'm saying it, here we go, right in frame. Hours after a shooting attack in Huwara on Sunday, they killed brothers Halel Yaniv and Yagel Yaniv from the settlement of Har Bracha. Hundreds of extremist settlers descended on the Palestinian town in the northern West Bank and set fire to homes, storefronts, and cars. One Palestinian man was killed and dozens injured in the rampage. So, like, the only reason that, the fucking pogrom... This actually answers my question of whether this was before or after the pogrom in Huwara, which just totally fucking wrecked the place. I mean, you look at pictures of what it looks like, it is just, there's very little... I mean, they kind of didn't leave one stone on another. And we really ought to be talking about that, dog, if we're going to be talking about if you're supposedly, you want to claim to be a leftist, maybe talk about the Palestinians here, because that was really fucked up. And naturally, because it's the Times of Israel, they try to, like, implicitly justify the pogrom by saying there was a shooting attack. And that's, like, the reason, which is exactly what was done with Kristallnacht, incidentally. They said, oh, this had to happen because of the murder of Ernst vom Rath.
Fascists who are sane enough to run a government, and the fascists who are too insane to run the government,
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a question of fucking mental health, that's all.
Like, basically every American...
This is just such wonderful political analysis he's providing.
Back in 1910 was a racist. But there is a pretty big difference between a racist who can put on a suit and tie, go in there, and do governance that at least...
What are you saying back in 1910? Like, I mean, what about today?
Somewhat keeps America afloat. And the kind of...
What does that mean, keep America afloat? Like, he does not question the... Like, who was afloat in 1910? I don't seem to remember the black community doing very well in 1910. I seem to remember them experiencing a lot of the same sort of shit that Palestinians in the West Bank experienced at the hand of these fucking settlers. Actually. And I seem to remember that the government was kind of cool with that. So I'm guessing that they weren't exactly afloat if you were to ask them. And I seem to remember workers fighting like hell for just basic stuff that workers in this country are now losing again. Like, if the fucking 8-hour day, getting paid in actual money rather than scrip and shit like that. I'm guessing they wouldn't have said that they were feeling particularly afloat either, Ian. Like, Jesus Christ.
Seething, frothing at the mouth Ku Klux Klan racist whose only position is their insane racial hatred and is actually incapable of any kind of governance outside of that. And that is consistently a problem. You mean like Trump versus DeSantis? I would say a better comparison would be McCain versus Trump, or the neo.
Wait, that's not a good example. I mean, McCain was a fucking loose cannon too.
Neocons versus Trump, where there's been a strong fascist element in the Republican Party for a long time, and
you've named people who are part of it, and everybody you've named is somehow, at the very least, not averse to it. I mean, if you wanted to say, there are the competent racists and the incompetent racists, you could have just said Trump and Biden. That's the difference between them. Biden is a white supremacist who Wall Street feels safe with. Trump is a white supremacist who's constantly causing shit to kick off, and so the ruling class gets a bit nervous because they prefer when people are, tranquilized.
And Trump, and the MAGA crowd represents a move towards people who aren't just very conservative, who aren't just anti-democracy, but are also so committed to those principles that they're bad at governance, really.
What does it mean to be bad at governance? There's not some objectively good at governance. That's not a thing. It depends. I mean, this is just neoliberal technocratic bullshit right here that he just has not picked apart because he doesn't understand anything, really. Because whether you're good at governance depends entirely on who you're governing for and what your objectives are. If you are in government and you get your objectives, I'd say that means you did pretty well. If you're in government and you fail to get your objectives, that doesn't necessarily mean you're bad at government. It may be that there was just no way to attain your objectives. Or it might mean you fucked up. God, this is just such a hot mess.
Be bad at it. They're not competent enough to govern. Elite IDF Intel unit veterans threaten to boycott reserve duty over legal overhaul.
Yeah, again, people who absolutely do not give a shit about Palestinians, once again. Our enemies rub their hands together in glee, say former members of Unit 8200. So, what they're specifically saying here is that Netanyahu is somehow objectively pro-Palestinian. When they talk about our enemies, that's who they're talking about. They're talking about Palestinians in the West Bank and Palestinian citizens of Israel inside the so-called Green Line. So these people, it's like when the fucking Democrats during the 2020 campaign decided to, attack the Republicans as being anti-cop, or as being too soft on Black Lives Matter and shit. That's what this is. These are the people he's looking at, because he doesn't know anything about Israeli. He doesn't even know, the really well-known, because a huge amount of the Israeli population is native English speakers because they came from here. Okay? So, basically, the entire Israeli media is available in English. Haaretz, for fuck's sake. Instead he's looking at the Times of Israel, and so he's getting all these, far-right people who are saying, yeah, they're not good at, they're doing fascism wrong. That's the problem with this government.
Damn. Leaning on intelligence experience, former members of Unit 8200 say they've identified telltale signs of Israel at risk. Our enemies rub their hands together in glee.
Well, that's not, how's that a bad thing? The people that they would identify as their enemies are not people that we would necessarily agree are their enemies. Do you think, Ian? Because to them, their enemies are the entire Palestinian population of the world, for example, Ian. So maybe the idea that maybe this isn't actually a bad thing, assuming that it's even true.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
Again, we'll see how it goes. Do you think McCain was anti-democracy? I don't think that McCain was personally anti-democracy.
Oh, God, another asinine question. I mean, another asinine statement, because the thing is, the entire U.S. political class is anti-democracy. Because if there were democracy in this country, none of them would have a job.
But Republicans have been responsible for the erosion of our democracy for a long time.
Our
Going back to
democracy.
Reagan would be one of the clearest examples. Reagan was like a fully like corporatist,
Corporatist. Fuck you, man.
nothing matters except the bottom line dollar, super ultra racist.
So what you're saying, he's a capitalist. See, what you're saying is that the U.S. is capitalist, and the government of the U.S. was people who follow capitalist logic. But he doesn't know what the fuck capitalism is, and his definition of fascism, if in case anyone's forgotten, is when the government controls capitalism. He doesn't know anything. Yeah, and he just he just has this fucking droning ass voice that he uses, and
homophobes that like he's really, really, really bad. He didn't weather at America's political institutions in the same way that, say, Trump does by openly attacking them. But
why should we give a shit about the U.S. political institutions? Those political institutions suck. Those political institutions are literally our enemies. They don't become our friends just because fascists also don't like them. In fact, they are more, even though fascists will, don't like them, the reality is that they are more used to fascists than they are to us, because they exist to promote the interests of capital, and that means crushing any kind of opposition to capital. Fascists are the far right, any kind of far right that's not in opposition to capital. We are. But he has absolutely no analysis of anything. It's just so fucking superficial.
yeah, Reagan, contributed to the erasure of these systems in large part by being like super duper pro corporate, like fuck over unions, corporations have like basically limitless.
You mean like every single subsequent president has been? I mean, you talk about Reagan, you have to talk about the fact that when he died, the who's who of like celebrity liberals were out there talking about, and the liberals in the political class were talking about what a great man he was, and how everything, like Obama talked about what a great thing it was that Reagan reined in the excesses of the 60s and stuff like that. So if you're saying that he eroded our institutions, whatever the fuck that is, then you have to acknowledge that he had bipartisan support for that, and that basically the entire political class is cool with it.
Limitless power to do whatever it is they want to do. Incredible power when it comes to maneuvering within our political system. And, is that fascism? Maybe not. It's neoconservatism, but it is fascistic in many ways, and it definitely like paves the.
Wait, how is that fascistic? You just went. I mean, you're okay. Not that I'm saying it's not. I'm saying that his previous definition had been that when the state controls capitalism, that's fascism, and now you sit here and you're saying that when the state doesn't control capitalism, that's fascism. And it's like he just doesn't know what the term means. He has no, like, there's so many possible definitions. He could just settle on one, and instead he can't. He just has two completely contradictory ideas of what it even means.
Right. We'll have to talk about that later, solar eclipse. Mitt Romney and McCain were not that bad at all, IMO, but they both lost in Republican.
They were actually really bad. They were horrible fucking people.
Started pushing.
I mean, Mitt Romney over at Bain Capital, fucking private equity spiv, white supremacist asshole John McCain.
Conservative candidates. No, don't buy into that. Mitt Romney and McCain were both still really bad.
God, worst person you know has a totally valid take.
Problem is that right now the bar is so low that it's difficult to see that. Not to mention, Romney and McCain have both defined themselves by being opposed to Trump's takeover of the party. But if Trump hadn't happened, if Mitt Romney and McCain had both been able to be president, they would have continued the exact same neoconservative policies that lead
He doesn't know what neoconservatism is either. Bless.
towards corporate control, de-democratization, and everything that essentially like led us to where we are right now. For everything openly fascistic Trump is able to do, he is backed by decades of Republican legislative press
And Democrats, too. They've all paved the way for this moment.
with regards to corporate power, with regards to like what the news media can do, with regards to Supreme Court precedent. And somebody like Trump just couldn't really exist without that.
Fact is, somebody like Trump could not exist without a political system that was just incapable of providing anything even resembling something fresh on the menu. I mean, that is really what it comes down to. Like, this fucking incompetent asshole, completely inarticulate, who, like, the only thing he can do is say racist shit. The reason that somebody like that wins in a U.S. election is because everybody else, who also sucks, in very much the same ways, actually, and we talk about substantive policy, but there was something, he provided something that a certain group of absolutely horrible people could get enthusiastic about, whereas, like, all the alternatives were people that nobody gave a shit about. Because that's all the political class can come up with, is people nobody really gives a shit about. Nobody gives a shit about Joe Biden. Joe Biden, if he were running against anyone else, if you were running against Mitt Romney, Romney would be president right now. The only reason Joe Biden had a chance is that people were shit scared that we might end up with 4 more years of Trump. And in effect, we've ended up with 4 more years of Trump because Biden has actually continued basically all the worst shit Trump was doing.
What differs neoliberalism and neoconservatism? In the latter, you hate gays a little bit more.
I mean, and you talk about stuff like, say, LGBT rights are much worse now. That's not because Trump was good. That's because the far right has come into their own at this point, particularly at state level, and so they are just advancing a genocidal agenda against trans people in particular. And the federal government's just kind of be like, yeah, God, I mean, it must suck to be them. I mean, fucking thoughts and prayers, right?
More than in the former, basically.
Okay, and that's it for tonight. Thank you to everyone who's joined, and let me just say, if you enjoy the stream as much as I do, please consider paying for the stream, which you can do with with the tip command to my tip page. And those contributions also count towards the fundraising goal for my current crowdfunded translation project, which is Alexandra Kalantai's social basis of the female question. I'm currently translating and fundraising for chapter 1, having already translated the introduction, and so all support is very much appreciated. Thank you. Have a good rest of your night and a good rest of your weekend, and I will see you again right here on Friday at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Have a